Welcome back, everybody. In today's video, we are breaking down my top 24 Dynasty running back rankings. Now, I will say, in regards to rankings videos, running back rankings get the most disagreement of all of them. I think it's because, in general, yeah, your young and elite guys, like as you can see, Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs, are generally going to be consensus at the top, and there's hardly going to be anybody that disagrees, except if maybe they're just a hardcore fan of their own specific team. But once we get down to some of these guys with running backs, they just generally have the shortest shelf life of any NFL player, for us in fantasy at least. And so, it becomes a thing of, is 1 year of elite production or potentially 2 years worth more than, 4 to maybe 5 years of just fine production, right? So I'm going to kind of mix it together in both the sense of having a win now mentality, but also kind of for a little bit of longevity as well. So I'm going to try to pick and choose where I rank these guys here wisely. You may disagree. If you end up disagreeing, though, instead of kind of yelling and being angry in the comment section, I think it would be a little bit constructive if you provided your own rankings or potentially the reasoning for which you disagree with any particular order of these rankings. So we're going to begin with S tier with Bijan Robinson. So as a rookie under Arthur Smith, who loved to use him as a decoy and God forbid feature him, right? He still finished as the RB9 in both a full point and half point PPR. Then this past season finished as the RB3 in a full point PPR and the RB4 in a half point PPR. He's one of the most talented runners of the football and receiving backs. You put it all together, he is a true 3-round back with elite draft capital, selected 8th overall in 2023. We saw that he was on a tear towards the end of this past season with 20-plus point games. I think with Michael Penix at the helm, the offense is going to run a lot more smoothly than it did with Kirk Cousins. I think we're generally going to see more efficiency with Bijan Robinson, and I have him in a tier with Jahmyr Gibbs. One other thing I want to mention is when I have guys in these tiers, I do not care which order within the tier they're ranked. They're not even numbered here. So if you wanted to go with Jahmyr Gibbs over Bijan, I have no problem with that. I mean, with Jahmyr Gibbs, for instance, he finished as the RB10 in both a full point and half point PPR as a rookie, and then the PPR overall running back 1 this past season, and half point PPR running back 2. Now, Saquon Barkley didn't end up playing in week 18, so that kind of skewed his finish, but regardless, he would have finished very high. Once again, regardless as to whether Saquon Barkley ended up playing that game, he's in a dynamic offense that even with the departure of Ben Johnson, I think we're going to see good things from this Lions offense. They're still going to be very high up there in points per game. I did hear that the new offensive coordinator specifically mentioned Jahmyr Gibbs as somebody that he wants to get the ball to, and I believe it was unsolicited as well. And generally, unsolicited compliments are the types of things in the offseason that I pay credence to. And so, after this elite finish, I personally would choose Bijan over Gibbs more often than not if I had a 1-for-1 decision just because of the BMI. But I wouldn't want to be over proportionate on any Bijan Robinson shares over Jahmyr Gibbs because they're both very talented. And I do think that Gibbs is in a better offense overall, but that's not to say that the Falcons offense isn't going to be great as well. Regardless, I think both of these guys are S tier by themselves running backs. There is going to be somebody I mentioned here that has easily the potential to be there, but we just haven't seen it yet. Now we move on to the A tier. It's going to be Ashton Jensen all by himself after being selected 6th overall by the Las Vegas Raiders. That's the elite draft capital that we want from our running backs, better than Bijan's or Gibbs. Now, before he's played a snap in the NFL, I'm not going to put him in the same tier as two guys that I know are certified RB1s who have finished as such, right? Now, with Ashton Jensen, he has the full 3-down potential that we want from our running backs. He's by far and away the most talented runner in this backfield. I don't think it's remotely close. And I think that we're going to be able to put him in that tier, and you may already have him there, probably, halfway through the season, once we just see that he is going to live up to expectations. I think the offense should be relatively good. They have Geno Smith, who, say what you want about Geno Smith, he can run a competent offense. He's a significant upgrade over Aiden O'Connell, who they still have as their quarterback too, which is, he's a fine quarterback too, in my opinion. They have centerpiece in the passing game, Brock Bowers. They drafted Jack Besh. They have Jacoby Myers. Overall, I think the offense is going to be fine. I think he's going to see a lot of volume, and I think that he has the talents to once again easily find himself in the S tier very soon. But until I end up seeing this from him, I just want to put him kind of in a tier of his own because I know he's talented and he did get the draft capital to suggest that he has this ability. But once again, I just want to see it before I put him up there with guys who are certified young stud RB1s. Now we move on to the B tier running backs. We have Omari Hampton and Saquon Barkley. With Omari Hampton, he was selected, I believe, 22nd overall by the Chargers. He finds himself in a little bit of a murky situation in the immediate future with them already having Najee Harris there. I think, though, that he's going to already probably lead a committee to start out right away and then probably take over the backfield at some point this season. In the future, I think he has a lead RB1 potential. I do differentiate him from Ashton Jensen that the draft capital, while still elite for him, being picked 6th overall versus 22nd overall is a big gap in my opinion. And with the lack of probable immediate dominance of his own backfield, I'm going to separate him just a little bit. I do think he's a little bit less talented, but still very talented. I comped him to Josh Jacobs. So yeah, I think that, very soon we're going to be able to move him up these rankings. But for now, just because of the immediate situation, I'm going to have him down here. Nonetheless, though, he finds himself with the Chargers in a Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh offense. They want to run the ball as much as they can. Yeah, say what you want about the Greg Roman offense in terms of the passing game, but the running game has almost always been successful. And I mean, if J.K. Dobbins, who I think is talented, looked that good in it this past season, I think we can expect good things from Hampton. With Saquon Barkley, he's coming off an RB2 overall season in a full point PPR because he didn't play in week 18. And then an overall RB1 finish in a half point PPR. He's finished as the RB1 before 10, 35, and 13 in a full PPR setting, including 2 top 5 finishes in 2 of the past 3 seasons. Now, he is coming off a 350 plus rush attempt season and is going to be a little bit over 28. Typically, age 28 is generally when we see the last peak production season from running backs, if not earlier, depending on the running back. There are exceptions that we'll get to a little bit later in these rankings, but I think he's really talented. I just would be very wary of him because of his age and the significant amount of touches with which he received this past season. I think, in the Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley-led Eagles offense with a dominant offensive line, that if he stays healthy, you can expect great things from him. And it wouldn't shock me at all if he finishes as the RB1 overall. But I do really worry historically for him this season. And if he were to have an injury-plagued season, given his age, I think he would lose a ton of value. Whereas if something happened like that with any of these other 3 running backs, unless it's a particularly gruesome injury, I really don't see them losing anywhere near as much value. So that's kind of why I have him here. Once again, if you wanted to put him over Omari Hampton, in my opinion, I wouldn't particularly care. I would give the edge to Hampton, even though these rankings aren't really, these tiered rankings aren't specifically numbered. But nonetheless, Saquon Barkley is an incredible talent, and if you do have him, you can choose to either write him out or potentially try to sell him while his value is probably at the highest that it's going to be for the rest of his career. Now we move on to the C tier running backs. We have Breece Hall, Devon Achane, Bucky Irving, Travion Henderson, and Quinshon Judkins. With Breece Hall, he's only 24 years old, going into his 4th NFL season. He's finished as the RB 42/43 in full point and half point PPR as a rookie. He only played in 7 games, but he was looking like a dominant RB1 before tearing his ACL. Then comes back and posts a ridiculously high volume season, finishing as the RB2 in a full point PPR and RB4 in his 2nd NFL season, before kind of fighting an injury bug throughout various points of this past season. Still played in 16 games, finished as the RB16 and 17 in a full point and half point PPR setting. I think that he's going to be very efficient on the ground this season with Justin Fields as a quarterback. I think the run game is going to be helped. And contrary to popular belief, Justin Fields actually has a very high check down rate. So when you hear these guys saying, oh, scrambling quarterbacks never throw down to their running backs, they don't check down, that is a situation by situation basis. Don't believe everything you hear. I think he's going to get a high amount of receptions and total workload. I know that they've talked about a running back by committee. Breece Hall is just way more talented. I don't think any NFL team, I mean, we saw that there was a quote where Ashton Jensen isn't going to get all the touches. Well, of course, you're not going to literally give all of the touches to one running back generally, unless you're Saquon Barkley, apparently. But nonetheless, I think that, Breece Hall is going to get a good workload. I think he's going to be efficient. I think he's going to be peppered in the short passing game. And I think he's going to return to being an RB1 for us. And he's still very young and I think very talented. Now we move on to Devon Achane. In 11 games as a rookie, he finished as the RB24 in both full point and half point PPR. before in 17 games this season finishing as the RB5 and 6. So with him, he really struggled when Tua was not in the lineup, but when Tua was in the lineup, he feasted just about every time. He doesn't have the first or second round draft capital that everyone I've mentioned up until this point has, but I still think he's the most talented runner on the team and receiving back as well. I think he should have put up very high upside games and kind of be a very low floor player on a week-to-week basis, contingent on, the health of Tua and the rest of this offense. The offensive line isn't very good, but he is. Nonetheless, I think you have yourself a stud, probable mid to low end RB1 overall this season with the, incoming draft class of running backs. Then we have Bucky Irving, a big surprise to most people. If he wasn't a surprise, then good for you. You were much smarter than I was. So he finished as CRB 13 in a full point PPR and 14.5 point PPR in 17 games. Really came on towards the back half of the season. Was incredible despite receiving very poor draft capital. I think we're going to see a repeat RB1 season somewhere in the top 12 from him. He has Baker Mayfield, a great offensive line. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, new addition to Mick Egbuka. He still has wide receiver 4 Jalen McMillan, Cade Otton. Very good offense. I think, Josh Grizzard shouldn't change much. If he does, I think he'll be making a mistake. But yeah, very talented player, and I don't think it should shock anybody if he finishes in the top 12 once again. Now we have Trevion Henderson. He lands with the Patriots. He is the best pass protecting back I've seen in some time coming out of college. Very good in the passing game, incredibly efficient and explosive in the run game as well. I think that he could give you a Jahmyr Gibbs light type of production in the sense of, not receiving a ton of carries on the ground, but getting enough on the ground, but enough receiving work as well, and having high big play upside to give you these massive big boom games with a very safe floor because of his efficiency. He has Drake May as his quarterback. I think they're going to want to get the ball out of Drake May's hands quickly, kind of help save him from the Patriots offensive line, who to their credit did spend the fourth overall pick on an offensive tackle. So I think that Trevion Henderson is going to get most of the work that we really care about, the third down work, the goal line work, and I think we're going to see Ramondre Stevenson, his counterpart, get a lot of the carries in between the 20s that just really are low impact carries for us. Obviously, we would prefer if our running backs received every carry imaginable, but that's just not realistic. And especially with somebody like him that does have a little bit of an injury history, I would prefer that they just give him more of that Gibbs-like workload when Montgomery's healthy. Now we move on to Quinshon Judkins, selected in the second round by the Cleveland Browns. With Quinshon Judkins, I like the landing spot. I think they have a fine enough offensive line to open up holes for him. I like that they have, weapons on the outside such as Jerry Jeudy. They have David Njoku as well, Cedric Tillman. I think he's going to get quite a bit of volume, and I think he's going to play kind of like a Nick Chubb role, but potentially with more receiving upside. Now, the team did draft Dylan Sampson in the 4th round, which I think really just tells you how they feel about Sampson, not so much what they think about Quinshon Judkins. Because generally, if you draft a running back in the 2nd round, you're not going to spend a 4th round pick on a running back in the same draft. So they obviously just had a high grade on Sampson. I do think that Sampson could eat into his workload a little bit, but I think that Judkins is going to receive the lion's share of the carries. I think he'll be at a much more favorable split than some running backs are this season. And I do think, though, that if they can just get their quarterback situation under control, I think that he has a lot of touchdown upside. I just don't know if it's going to present itself this season. Regardless, though, I think he has the ability to move up these rankings. He's very young. He's still only 21 at this point in time. Very talented, and should be in an offense that's going to afford him a lot of volume. And I want to give a special shout out to my Patreon members. Thank you to Big Hunt, SP, Mage Jack, and Infamy MTG. If you would like to become a Patreon member, the link's going to be below in the comment section. There we're going to have weekly live streams where we go over, fantasy news, potential buy low candidates, sell high candidates, depending on the news. We're going to give you specific league-oriented roster construction with trade advice based on your specific league settings there. We're going to give you access to early videos. We're going to give you the ability to suggest videos as well. I made a private video for someone on Isaac Rendo, some of the pluses, minuses to his game, things to like, and specific price points to sell or buy for. You're also going to find that we are working on a model with predictive capability for running backs, quarterbacks, tight ends, and wide receivers based on a variety of specific metrics minimums and maximums to be in an acceptable range for us in fantasy that will be predictive and lead us to being able to be more successful, we think, than the average person in determining which prospects based on these thresholds are likely to hit or unlikely to hit. And we're also going to be updating that each and every single year with the new prospects so that we can continuously have the best model possible. So once again, if you'd like to become a member, the link's going to be below in the comment section. Thanks. And now we move to the D tier, where we have Jonathan Taylor, Kyron Williams, Josh Jacobs, James Cook, RJ Harvey, and Derrick Henry. Now, this tier of running backs, I think, is kind of composed of guys that are a little bit older that have elite RB1 upside, and then kind of younger guys that I think definitely have RB1 upside, but may not be quite as proven yet, or just may not, in my opinion, have the highest likelihood of being the RB1 overall any given season. We begin with Jonathan Taylor, though, who has finished as the RB1 overall in his second NFL season. So he's finished as the RB 6, 1, 33, 33, and 12 in a full point PPR setting the past 5 seasons. You know, with him, he's missed time in each of the past 3 seasons, despite his RB12 finish, which was impressive given he only played 14 games. He's only played 11, 10, and 14 games in the past 3 seasons. I think that health is going to bite him in the butt, and I think that I would personally, if I don't have any shares anymore, but if I did, I would try to sell high right now. If I had any shares, or would have had any this past season, I would have sold before the NFL draft for sure, to try to get younger at running back. I think he's a talented player who's in a great situation, but just the injuries really scare me. And I mean, he's 26 right now. Once he gets to be 27 or 28, I think his market is just going to be much less desirable than it is now. And I think you should probably try to get out from him. But nonetheless, if he's able to stay fully healthy for, a full season, he could easily be a mid RB1 in my opinion. Now we have Kyron Williams, who is an absolute anomaly. Yeah, one of the worst athletes at the NFL in the running back position that there is. He's only 24 though, and is coming into his 4th NFL season. He's finished his RB 88 in his rookie season, 7 and 7 in the past 2. He's in a situation where he's basically given the most work of any running back, the highest snap share. I believe he even out-snapped Saquon Barkley, if I'm remembering that correctly. Regardless, it was very close. And he has a lot of touchdown upside. Now, he just doesn't have the receiving game upside that I would prefer in my running back, but he's kind of just McVay's guy. We'll see if that translates into an extension. I really worry for his long-term value if he's not on the Rams, though. I don't know that he would be anywhere close to this if he wasn't given such a ridiculous amount of work, and then in an offense that has such touchdown upside that the Rams do. But nonetheless, I think you can ride him out for at least one more season. I think he's going to be used as a full-time back, but he's another guy that I would be selling as quickly as possible, and I would have already done so if I had any shares, and actually did end up selling him and ended up upgrading, at least in my opinion, to Travion Henderson. You may or may not agree with that being an upgrade. I want the youth and the projected floor and ceiling that comes with Henderson, as opposed to the potential short-term higher upside, but very risky long-term in my opinion. Then we have Josh Jacobs. He's 27. He's coming off an RB6 season in a full-point PPR setting. He's been the RB 21, 8, 11, 3, and 28, and 6 in the past 6 seasons. So with Josh Jacobs, very talented player, going to get a bunch of volume, very high touchdown upside. And one thing I really like about him is that Green Bay is going to want to salt the ball away, come playoff time, and especially when our fantasy playoffs are coming, because it's going to be very crappy weather generally in Green Bay. And so I think that he's going to give you your best output when it matters the most. And he's a running back that, despite being a little bit older, I would be looking to buy if I could for a reasonable price. I think he's going to help you out a lot come fantasy football playoff time. Then we have James Cook. He's 25. There's been talks about him holding out. He did hold out for a little bit. He is back, though. We'll see if he gets extended. He finished as the RB 44 as a rookie, but didn't really play. Then the RB 12 and 8. He's coming off a season where he scored a ludicrous amount of touchdowns. I think that regresses slightly. I think he's more of a low-end RB1, but, he's only 25 in a great offense that should afford him a lot of touchdown opportunity. So nonetheless, I think that he's a great asset to own. If I could flip him for somebody else, I would, in the event that he's not extended after this season and finds himself somewhere else. But they could always tag him as well, although he may not be very happy and may hold out. But nonetheless, if he does, as long as he's with the Bills or in a high-powered offense, I think he's a great talent. And I think that if he's your RB1, you should be fine with it, but I would prefer that he's my RB2. Now we have RJ Harvey. Now, they did just sign J.K. Dobbins. I think that kind of hurts his short-term value a little bit, but J.K. Dobbins, I'm a Ravens fan. I love Dobbins. He's a talented guy, but he's just never been able to stay healthy. I think that RJ Harvey, I comped him to LaShawn McCoy in terms of his play style. He's elusive. He makes people miss in a phone booth. Loves to bounce, runs out to the outside. Very explosive in the receiving game as well. Not the best pass blocker, though. Sean Payton, I believe, has said that he's not quite there. It doesn't have his wings for the Joker role yet, but I think that could be coming as soon as this next season. I think Evan Ingram is going to be their Joker for now. Nonetheless, though, I like RJ Harvey. Received late second round draft capital, 60th overall. I think that we can expect a high-end RB2 season from him, but potentially could find himself into a low-end RB1 season with some touchdown luck. Nonetheless, I love him for the future. Even if he is a little bit older, he's going to be north of 24 as a rookie. But nonetheless, we don't really care. Running backs generally don't have a shelf life of more than 4 to 5 years unless they're truly elite backs. So I think you're going to get a rookie contract out of him, and you'll be happy if you took him. Now we have Derrick Henry, rather. So he is a very interesting one. He's 31 years old right now, but is coming off an RB4 season in which he played 17 games. So he's been the RB 46, 36, 15, 5, 3, 21, 4, 8, and 4 during his NFL career, including, once again, 2 top 5 finishes in the past 3 seasons. He's one of these exceptions to the rule where, despite being advanced in age and having a lot of opportunity throughout his NFL career, he's still chugging. I have him up here because while some of these older running backs I am going to have a little bit older, I think that he has a much higher chance of returning RB1 potential overall value for you, because while he did score a lot of touchdowns, I don't see any reason for that to regress. The Ravens offense loves to run the football in the red zone. I think that he's going to score plenty of touchdowns, and until I see significant signs of decline from Derrick Henry, I think you can trust him as an elite RB1. If you had him as your RB1 on your team, in the sense of the most talented player, I would be a little bit worried, because if he gets hurt, you could just not have any value with him. But if you have another one of these running backs to go with him, I would be ecstatic. And so, yeah, I love Derrick Henry, and we'll see how long it is until the rails fall off with him. Now we move on to the E tier of running backs. We have Caleb Johnson, Chuba Hubbard, Chase Brown, and Kenneth Walker III. With Caleb Johnson, he was selected in the 3rd round by the Steelers. I think in most drafts he would have been a 2nd round running back, but this draft class of, Genty, Hampton, Henderson, and Judkins, Harvey, and Caleb Johnson, and, even more like Bashal Tutin, it was such an incredible class that I think it pushed him down, but he landed in the perfect landing spot. He's a great fit for the outside zone system that Arthur Smith likes to employ. Great vision, contact balance where he kind of bounces off more than trucks through guys consistently. But nonetheless, I think he's going to fill the Najee Harris void, and I think he's better than Najee Harris. And the best part is, in your rookie drafts and even in redraft leagues alike, you just don't have to spend the premium pick that you did on Najee Harris coming in as a 1st round rookie back in 2021. I think that, with the addition of Aaron Rodgers, it should improve the efficiency of the offense. I do think that Rodgers is going to probably once again try to stat pad and check out of goal line runs so he can pad his touchdown stats. I think that could be potentially a little bit frustrating, but I think he's a talented player, is by far and away the best candidate to get the Najee Harris workload in this offense. And I think he's going to be a very safe floor player, albeit potentially a little bit more limited as an upside play, because I don't think he's particularly impactful in the receiving game. I think he's fine. Now we move on to Chuba Hubbard. It was unexpected this past season. He was the RB 35, 53, and 27 before finishing as the RB 14 this past season. He did receive a lucrative extension in Carolina to stay as the lead back there. His primary competition, Jonathan Brooks, tore his ACL for a 2nd year in a row. We probably won't see him until 2026 at best. We'll see how that plays out. But nonetheless, I think that, with the short-term, probable 2 years that he's more than likely guaranteed to be either the starter or a significant part of the team's plans, that you can trust him as a high-end RB2, low-end RB1 type with big boom weeks, albeit not quite the floor we would like given his lack of receiving prowess. I still think he's a talented player, though, once again, and I think that this tier is generally right for his fit, in my opinion. Now we move on to Chase Brown. You know, he finishes the RB 63 as a rookie and the RB 10 in 16 games this past season. Now, I know a lot of people are probably going to want him a lot higher. I think he's just not that talented. I think people confuse their need to give him this many touches with him just outright taking over a backfield. And I think people are confusing volume with efficiency. I think he should get plenty of volume, and I think he's probably going to be, you know, a high-end RB2, low-end RB1 type, just like with Chuba Hubbard. He just does not have the team investment that I would like, and he just really wasn't that efficient. I think he has a decent amount of touchdown upside, and I think he has kind of scammy PPR upside as well, which we don't really care about the scammy nature of it. He's just, once again, I think he's a fine running back who's replaceable. Without a significant team investment, I would put him down here. Some people are probably going to want him higher. I think that with Zach Moss returning and them drafting Taj Brooks, that he could potentially see some of his workload decrease a little bit, although I think he's definitely going to be the favorite running back out of this group. And I think he's going to give you some high upside weeks. I just think that the volume isn't going to be quite as much as we saw at the end of this past season when they lost Zach Moss and just had nobody else to turn to. Then we have Kenneth Walker, somebody who I think is the most talented, or at least one of the most talented rushers of the football in the NFL, but he's just dealt with so many injuries over and over again that his ending finish never is reflective of how talented he actually is. I mean, he's finished as the RB 18, 19, and 27 in a full point PPR setting. Despite having really high highs, his floor is just very low at times, and he's just only played in 15, 15, and 11 games in each of his first 3 seasons. He's somebody that I think I would probably be trying to buy low on if I could get him for relatively cheap, you know, a second round pick. I think he's more talented than that, and I think he does have the opportunity to either get extended or potentially move on and find greener pastures. I think he's always going to be one of these guys where he's very valuable in spurts, but you just kind of want him as your RB3 if possible. Fine as your RB2 if you have somebody that you can bring in, if potentially you have Charbonnet handcuffed, but I would be very scared if he was my RB1. Nonetheless, very talented player, and I think that, you know, he's only 24 years old. I think he has a couple more years left in the league, and if he is able to put together a fully healthy season at any point, kind of like James Conner did for the entirety of the fantasy season at least, I think that he could provide us with one of these massive seasons for us at running back. Now we have the F tier of running backs. We have Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, Joe Mixon, and David Montgomery. So with Kamara, I kind of wanted to put him up in the next tier. With the age, it really worries me. I mean, he hasn't played a fully healthy season since 2017. He is 29 years old. He's going to be 30 at some point this season. So, you know, he's finished as the RB 3, 4, 9, 1, 8, 16, 11, and 9 in a full point PPR setting in every season of his NFL career. So he's at the very least been the RB 16 or higher. I think that he is declining rapidly as a rusher of the football, but I think he's still one of the best receiving backs there is in football. I worry that potentially lessen his workload a little bit, and I just don't think he has the elite top shelf upside given that, you know, he's only played in 16, 15, 14, 15, 13, 15, 13, and 14 games throughout his NFL career. He just does not have the durability in general to play a full slate of games. I know some of these were suspensions, but I think this is kind of where I draw the line of, yeah, Derrick Henry, I could see him being the RB1 overall for at least one more season. With him, I think, though, you're getting him being Kamara. I think you're getting an RB1 if he stays healthy enough, with elite upside and a pretty good floor as well. I just really worry about the age cliff with him. Christian McCaffrey, it's really the same thing. You know, he's finished as the RB 10, 2, 1, 53, 38, 2, 1, and 68 throughout his NFL career. And in 3 of the past 5 seasons has not played more than 7 games in a season. I really worry about the durability. I think that this could be the end for him. I mean, he's 29 years old and he's coming off a season in which he was hurt twice and really just did not look that good, especially on the ground. I really think he's cooked in my opinion, but I definitely could understand that he could theoretically come back and be an elite RB1. I'm out on him. If I could get anything of value for him, I would be trading him away. I would not be buying low on him. I might buy low in Kamara, but I would love for him to prove me wrong. with these old running backs that are hurt a lot, and the last time we saw them, they didn't look particularly great. I'm not trying to invest in them, especially if I have to provide anything of value in a trade. Then we have Joe Mixon, who's 28 years old. Now, he's coming off an RB 17 finish in 14 games. In his career, he's finished as the RB 34, 10, 13, 49, 4, 10, 6, and 17. He's played one 17-game season in his NFL career. He's played 14, 14, 16, 6, 16, 15, 17, and 14 games. Throughout the duration of the first half of this season, he looked incredible on the ground. I mean, he put up some massive games and rather consistently. That kind of trailed off towards the latter half of the season. I think the offensive line woes, as well as the injuries to the receiver core, definitely hurt him there. Plus, they signed a Nick Chubb, who I think could steal some valuable touches, particularly along the goal line away. I still think he's a talented player, though, who, if he's able to stay healthy and look more like the running back we saw in the first half of this past season, I think he could produce some massive results for us. I just think that, with guys like him, McCaffrey, and Alvin Kamara, that I would value them significantly less than somebody like Derrick Henry, even though they're all older, because I think Derrick Henry could legitimately be the RB1 overall, whereas I just don't see that in particular with Joe Mixon. Then we get to our final running back in the top 24, in my opinion, in David Montgomery. He's somebody that's finished as the RB 24, 4, 19, 24, 17, and 18 in 16, 15, 13, 16, 14, and 14 games. He's missed time pretty much every season. But he's a very safe floor running back in this Detroit Lions offense with a decent ceiling. If anything were to happen to Jahmyr Gibbs, he has elite RB1 potential, in my opinion. I think that he's going to be, once again, your safe, run-of-the-mill RB2 with high touchdown upside any given week. And I think he's going to be a consistent RB2 for you, but I just, without an injury, don't foresee him being anywhere higher than that. And, with him being 28 and that significant injury history, I do worry about his longevity, and I think his value could really drop off at any time. But for now, I think that he's a safe play as an RB2 for you. Now we're going to move to 3 running backs that just missed the list, in my opinion. We have DeAndre Swift of the Chicago Bears. As of now, he's by far and away the favorite to lead the running back room in total volume. I think he's fine in the receiving game. I think he's a little bit inefficient at times on the ground, but he is a big play threat. One thing to note is we don't know who exactly wanted him out of the Lions offense, but Ben Johnson, their new head coach, being Chicago, he was the offensive coordinator of the Lions when Swift was let go, so we don't know that he does or particularly might not like DeAndre Swift. I do think, though, that he likes efficiency and high EPA, and with DeAndre Swift being a little bit inefficient at times, I do worry about him. I worry that they potentially bring in a running back. Fortunately for Swift, J.K. Dobbins isn't going to happen because he was just signed. So I think for now, he's safe as an RB2 with high upside weeks if he gets those touchdowns or big plays. But I think that there were a lot of rumors, by the way, of them trying to get Travion Henderson, who would decimate DeAndre Swift and would immediately be a better player in his exact role. So I do think that the future is very sketchy, but I think for this season, you can trust him for now unless they make some blockbuster trade. Then we have Cam Skattebo. He's a 4th-round pick. He is going to be sharing the workload with Tyrone Tracy. He does have the 3-down ability that we like. He has a high BMI, which we like. I could easily see him taking over this backfield, but with 4th-round draft capital, we just don't know what his workload is going to look like in the immediate future. I think, though, that he could be poised for a good bit of volume, and I do think the Giants' offense should be a little bit more improved this season. And so I think that he has the ability to skyrocket in value. It's just that it wasn't a significant team investment, and the current role is a little bit muddy. And then finally, we have James Conner, somebody that, he's going to be 30 years old. He's very talented. He finally put together a fully healthy fantasy season for us, although he did miss week 18 with injury. He still, to this date in his career, has never played a full NFL season. He's always been hurt and missed some time. I think the value is just whatever he gives you now. I think that, if you wanted to trade him away during the season, you could get something decent, maybe if you package him. I think you could maybe get a 2nd-round pick from a contender, but his value could drop off at any moment in time. But, if he's able to stay healthy for say 15 games, I do think that he could be an RB1 for you in some capacity. It's just very risky, and he's just one of these guys where he's always missing time, and the value could just drop off at any moment in time. And so to conclude, in the S tier, we have Bijan and Gibbs. In the A tier, we have Ashton Jensen. In the B tier, we have Hampton and Barkley. In the C tier, we have Hall, Achane, Irving, Henderson, and Judkins. In the D tier, we have Taylor, Williams, Jacobs, Cook, Harvey, and Henry. In the E tier, we have Johnson, Hubbard, Brown, and Walker. And then in the F tier, we have Kamara, McCaffrey, Mixon, and David Montgomery. You may or may not like these rankings. You may disagree at certain points. If so, please let me know below in the comment section. I tried to mix a little bit of win now with longevity in these rankings. It's very tough because if you're a rebuilder, some of these guys are basically worthless to you. Whereas if you're a contender, some of these guys that would be worthless if you're a rebuilder have a ton of value for you win now wise. So yeah, once again, let me know where you disagree in the comment section. Once again, feel free to subscribe to my Patreon. I do not make any money off of these videos because I make a lot of film breakdown content, and so I'm unable to monetize that. I would really appreciate your support. Feel free to like the video, share it, and feel free to subscribe to the channel if you have not done so. I would really appreciate it. Thank you, and have a good day.